My name's Steve Pruchniewski. I'm talking about NetApp StorageGRID object storage. And we're talking about creating your data fabric. So really, when we talk about data fabric, we're talking about hybrid cloud workflows. So what we see StorageGRID as more and more applications natively talk S3, is being able to be kind of the hub of your data fabric. With all these applications talking S3, StorageGRID can sit at the center, help expose data to external compute, help with these workflows. So kind of here we're illustrating being able to use resources from Microsoft Azure, from Amazon, being able to distribute content out to different data centers for local consumption. We're able to run analytics against it or act as a data lake with Hadoop. And then we can also do things with containers and images. And then, of course, under the cover there, we can serve other applications. So by keeping a commitment to standard APIs and standard operations, the things that you build on StorageGRID are inherently portable. So if I built something that works on Amazon, I can bring it home to run it on StorageGRID and vice versa. You're never locked in. So we want to maintain cloud portability, and we want to be able to help our customers leverage the best of the cloud. So I want to touch on Fabric Pool real quick. Again, this is NetApp's product where we can tier from our all-flash FAS to another cloud. And again, it doesn't have to be StorageGRID, but this is where a lot of our customers are starting, right? They're interested in S3, they're interested in object storage. If you've got an all-flash FAS, this is something you should absolutely look at because data becomes cold. This is a very efficient way to operate, and then you get into other workloads. So I want to talk a bit about storage pools. So storage pools is how we logically group things. So here I'm making a North America pool that consists of San Francisco and Atlanta, and an EU pool with France and Germany. And now I can go ahead and extend this concept to the cloud. So Cloud Pool 1 is going to be Amazon Glacier. Cloud Pool 2 is going to be Azure Blob. So I can create those rule sets and now use the capacity from the cloud. This is what we're calling platform services. So these are actually invoked by the storage users, right? So that cloud storage pool would be invoked by the grid administrator. This is something that our users can do. So Cloud Mirror is where we can actually replicate out to another S3 target. So in this case, I'm going to replicate my data to Amazon S3 and then run Elastic MapReduce against it. And then the other thing we can do is we can invoke serverless functions with SNS against data that's in StorageGRID. So I don't have to use storage in Amazon. I can just go ahead and create a policy that allows Lambda function to read my object. So the demo we did a few years back at Insight was we put a photograph of a person in the bucket. We then kicked off a notification to run recognition. It judged that person's mood and then added a metadata tag, mood equals happy, mood equals sad, mood equals angry. And then the next part is to use Elastic. So what we can do is then say, show me all the angry people, and then see if there's some correlation. Oh, everybody's angry around 4 o'clock, and maybe that coincides to a slowdown in the system or something like that. So our users are able to do these really interesting things, right? They can expose compute to the web. Good.
So it's interesting to having the event notification, but actually everything you do if you run a function on Amazon is moving a lot of data back and forth. Would be nicer to have it integrated in the object store.
So I can expose an endpoint, and that function can read the object directly from StorageGRID, but I shouldn't be invoking any storage fees from Amazon in that case, correct? I'm not actually copying it to the web. I'm actually letting this thing read a URL of my object.
Well, you are using bandwidth. It takes a lot of time to move it. So think about if you are analyzing 1 terabyte of movies.
True. So we can do this on-prem. There are on-prem versions of notifications. Our QA department actually uses one. So you wouldn't have to use Amazon. You could actually do it on-prem. So yeah, I agree with you. The idea is move compute to the data instead of data to the compute and use those resources.
Do you know that would be a good thing you could use your NKS for?
That's a good idea. So this is really washed out. It's hard to see here, but this is a screenshot of NetApp Cloud Sync. So more and more, we do talk with customers that are maybe running another object store, or they have a large data set on file that they want to move into StorageGRID. So NetApp Cloud Sync is kind of the Swiss Army knife of data movement. It allows me to do object to object, file to object, object to file. And so what you do here is just literally drag and drop. I would pull down Amazon if I want to copy it to StorageGRID, and then it will spin up a data mover. That can be either in the cloud or it can be on-prem. And again, that policy will move it. It does require a connection to Amazon. That's how they do the chargeback and billing. So that's not always the case for some of our government customers who are sealed off. So this is a cool real-world story. This is
Steve, sorry, can I just go back to that previous one? Whereabouts is the metadata being kept for that? Because obviously, moving individual objects out of buckets and stuff, somehow I still want to keep track of the original bucket it might have been in and the URL I was referencing it and so on. So how are you managing that with migrates and copies and so on?
That's a good question. So you're saying when I copy it into a different object store, does it maintain the metadata or?
Well, my end user might not want to change his understanding of where the reference was for that object, because they might want to still go in through the original URL.
Right. So you could copy it, but if you move it, yeah, that's a good question. How do you update the user? So you do need to update the application. We do have, some customers have come to say, I'm running, another object store right now. I want to be able to move everything over to yours. How do I do that and not disrupt things? And that is a challenge. There are some clever ideas with like an S3 proxy, where I could do things like, layer 7. I'm doing all the new writes to my new system, and I'm continuing to do reads from the old system. It's an interesting problem to solve.
Okay. Not solved then?
That's not solved.
Okay, right, okay, fair enough.
So I want to illustrate this. I think this illustrates a lot of cool things here. So this is NetApp's upload.netapp.com. So if you are a NetApp customer and you're uploading a large support file to support, right? That has been a painful thing in the past. So in the past, you actually had to have a browser plugin, and then you're uploading this multi-gigabyte file, and if it failed at some point, you had to start over again. So now our dev staff has created upload.netapp.com. It's using S3 multi-part upload. So it's taking that object, chopping it up into a bunch of little pieces. It streams it out. If it fails for some reason, it'll pick up right where it left off. You can actually start it on one laptop and finish it on another. And the other cool thing it does is it actually, adheres to European data locality rules. So what this will do is you log on to upload.netapp.com, and it will say, are you from Europe? And if you are, it will send all of your data to our Amsterdam data center. There are certain files that have to stay in the EU. These are human-readable files. They will stay in the EU. The core processing files that can be sent back to the US, we use the Cloud Mirror feature to send back to StorageGRID in the US. So this is effectively 2 private independent StorageGRID instances. So it's this private cloud to private cloud. And then we're using SNS to kick off processing of those core files. So we're kind of using a little bit of everything here. And then the next part is going to be how do we support the rest of the world? So NetApp's got data centers in North America, and we've got that data center in Amsterdam. We don't have any in Asia Pac or Australia or South America. What we're going to do is use Amazon for this next part. So in this case, if you're a customer in Australia, you will do your upload to a local region within Australia, so you get that fast response. We're then using Amazon's cross-region replication to replicate back to US East 1. And then from US East 1, we're using Cloud Sync to pull it back into StorageGRID. So again, really cool example of NetApp, kind of living that data fabric thing where we're not always using our own product, but we're using it in a way that blends with the public cloud, right? So I just think it's a really interesting example. There's a blog out here that I encourage you to go check out. It's interesting because it actually covers how they did the application. And there's another follow-up blog that talks about the configuration they did on the F5 to support this. So I'm going to get into a demo here in a minute. And here's the situation that we find some customers coming into, and kind of illustrates, how the world is changing and how you need to be flexible. So today, this is perfectly valid, right? The UK is part of the EU. So we actually have a customer. Still. Check. Make sure I'm not saying anything that's not true anymore. But we literally have a customer.
We don't know.
That will be in this situation, right? So if the UK is no longer part of the EU, they will have a subset of data they need to evacuate. And they'll use ILM rules to do that. And I'm going to show that in our demo. So at this point, I'm going to pop over to my StorageGRID system. And I'll just sit down real quick here. So I'm logging into StorageGRID. This is an instance that's running internally. It's on VMs, right? So I don't actually have a data center in France, Germany, and UK here. But as you log in here, you get this dashboard view. If there's any alerts or alarms, they'll show up here. Right now, it's telling me I don't have a valid license. It's just a lab. And then we can see the space that's used and the resources that are available in my 3 data centers. So Germany is actually a little bigger than the other 2. I've got a bit of an asymmetrical architecture going. And then I've got this one big ring that shows me the overall performance or the overall capacity of the whole grid. And again, things can be asymmetrical as I create these data management rules. So again, if I had any alarms, we could drill down into them. Right here where it talks about ILM, this is really key to StorageGRID, right? So as we're applying those data management rules, we want to make sure we're doing it in as near real time as possible. So if we see that a waiting client queue bump up during the day, that's perfectly acceptable. If we see it keep climbing and climbing, that might we need more resources. And a lot of times with those rules where I'm moving it across geography, the resource I might need is more bandwidth. So again, we can show you that information and help you design the right grid. If we dig into our nodes view, we can then see how everything is distributed. So I can take a look at things from the grid perspective, from the perspective of a single site, and then I can start drilling down into my individual nodes. So in Germany, for instance, I've got 2 of my gateway nodes, which are really load balancers. I've got 4 storage nodes. In the UK, I've got an admin node. I've got an admin node in France. And then I've got more load balancers as well. So what I did was I created an HA group for Germany and for the UK. So I've got my German HA group, which I'm bonding together my 2 load balancers for high availability. I did the same thing in the UK. And then I made corresponding load balancer endpoints. So if I want to write to the UK, I'm going to write to the URL s3-uk.netapp.com. That correlates to the VIP of that HA group. And when you do this, it will prompt you for an SSL certificate, right? So this is something a lot of our customers have struggled with. It'll say, hey, what's your name going to be? Do you have an SSL cert from your CA? Or go ahead and I'll create one for you. So the next part we want to do is go ahead and do a logical configuration. So let's go ahead and create storage pools. So in this case, I've created a pool for the UK, which contains nodes from the UK. And you can see I've got 3 nodes there. Went ahead and did the same thing for Germany and France. I also went ahead and created a pool specifically for geo-distributed erasure coding. So in this case, I'm taking all my nodes and I'm creating an EC rule that will take advantage of them all. And then down here at the bottom, you can see I've got a cloud storage pool. So in this case, I've created a bucket in Amazon that effectively acts the same as one of my other pools. I can make a rule that puts things there. And let's go ahead and look at the way we do erasure coding. So again, I'm going to take advantage of that big ECU pool and do a 4+2 across those sites. So that gives me site redundancy. It shows me how many nodes I can lose. I can also do just erasure coding within Germany. So if I've got a certain subset of data that has to stay in Germany, I still want to protect it, obviously, I could do something like create a 2-copy policy, or in this case, I'm just doing 2+1 across those 4 nodes. So let's go ahead and get into our rule set. So now we've got these resources defined. Now I'm going to create a set of rules that will take advantage of them. So in this case, I've gone ahead and created a couple different rules. So this is my rule that says I'm going to tier to Amazon. So in this case, I say, hey, if you make a bucket that starts with AWS dash, then I'm going to keep 1 copy in the cloud, and I'm going to keep 1 copy on-prem. And then, of course, I've got a rule that I can do something like age to erasure coding. So we see a lot of our customers doing something like this, where they are starting off with a number of full copies, and then over time, they're going to move it to erasure coding. So here I'm doing 2-copy round robin over 3 sites, right? So you give me an object, I make 2 copies, 1 in France, 1 in UK, maybe the next one's in UK and Germany, and I'm round robining if it's over 1 megabyte in size. So here's kind of the big one I want to talk about right now. So in this case, I've created a rule for my EU data. So what I've done here is I've said, hey, if your metadata location, right, your user metadata is location equals EU, then I'm going to do 2 copies round robin over UK, France, and Germany. And today, that's perfectly OK. So what I'll do is go ahead and pop over to my Amazon CLI. Let me just clear this real quick. I'm going to go ahead and copy my object called EU data.text. I'm going to put it in my test bucket, and I'm going to add that metadata tag location equals EU. And the endpoint I'm doing it to, I'm writing it to my UK data center. So I'll go ahead, I uploaded it, and now let's go ahead back to the UI and do a location object metadata lookup and see where it landed. Oops. So we can see I've got a copy of it on my storage node number 2 in the UK, and then storage node number 1 in France. So again, this is perfectly OK as long as Brexit hasn't happened. So now Brexit happens. So what we're going to do is go and change our policy. So I've created another rule that's for post-Brexit. So if we go and look at our policies, I'm going to clone my existing policy. I'm going to rename it to EU data policy post-Brexit. And you can see I've been doing this a few times in practice. So I'll call this one 4, and I'll say the EU is out. Or I'm sorry, the UK is out. So I want to go ahead and select my rules. So in this case, I'm going to add my EU post-Brexit rule. And if we take a look at that, we can see that it no longer contains the UK, right? So now I've got France, I've got Germany, got that same metadata location tag.
You do know, Steve, that there will be data that will actually stay in the UK and we'll take out of Europe. It's not all going to be one-way traffic of all data leaving the UK going to Europe.
Okay, this is
We're
getting
bringing our own
personal.
data back now.
Yeah, there must be something we have that Europe wants.
Exactly. So there needs to be another policy for doing it the other way around, isn't there?
Yeah, so that's the beauty, right? You can change your policies and make happen what you need to happen. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and remove my other EU data rule. And the other important part here is the ordering of the rules, right? So rules are evaluated or objects are evaluated against this rule set. So I'm going to make sure that my post-Brexit EU rule is up here at the top, saying it's France and Germany. And I'm going to go ahead and save this policy. And now at this point, it is a proposed policy. It's not been activated yet.
A bit like Brexit.
A bit like Brexit, exactly. The important thing here is before you ever activate a policy, you want to test it out. A lot of our customers are creating policies to delete data. You want to be really, really sure that you don't accidentally delete the wrong data. We will totally be able to show you in the audit log and in here why your data got deleted, but it won't make you feel any better. So what you want to do is come down here and click the Simulate button, and I'm going to go ahead and evaluate that same object. And what it will show is that it's going to match my new EU post-Brexit rule. I'm going to say finish, and then I'm going to activate it. It's going to say, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Because now stuff is going to start happening. So if I was a patient person, I could wait some amount of time, and it would move that object for me automatically. But for purposes of this demo, I'm just going to go ahead and upload the same object again. It'll upload, and now when we come back to here, we'll go ahead and do that object lookup again. And we can now see that it's looking at France and Germany. It's no longer in the UK.